Webinar is just a kind of podcast style with myself being the CEO of BPM RIA and my dear friend Ryan Garrison, who I've been in masterminds for, I don't know, what are we on, 4 years, 5 years I've known you? Somewhere around
I
there,
think right about that, yeah.
around 5 years. And I'll let him introduce himself once we start going. I am very fortunate. He is on the West Coast, not the West Coast of Florida, the real West Coast. So I got him up in early. And the cool thing is, the years I've known Ryan, he's been doing some awesome creative financing stuff. And, I learned a ton of stuff from him. And I'm excited to have him on here. And we'll kind of just run through some announcements. So one of the things I am doing is I am raffling a 2-day quick start training. So make sure you actually text the word quick start. One of you guys are going to get paid to hang out with us today. So it is a $695 value. Our next quick start is August 10th and 11th. Cameras on. I give you a money back guarantee. It should be pretty awesome when it comes to it. We've had people from our quick start actually do deals, even though they're not in our mentoring program. So go ahead and put it in the go ahead and text quick start. And then also we are committed to a ton of events. So what do I have coming up with Jose Ramirez? 5 ways to reduce your taxes is coming up, and we got a free raffle on that one. Advanced Tax Advisors, it's July 24th, which is, what is that, like 10 days away from today? We also have an in-person meeting, July 27th, where I'm going to show you 20 ways to invest in real estate. And what I've been committed, if you notice, there are raffles everywhere. We all are also having our first networking event in Las Olas, sponsored by Fractional Company, Fractional Partnership. And it is going to be awesome. It is at Salt 7. So if you're in Las Olas, come see me out there. It's going to be fun. We're also doing an in-person event in Boca. So you Palm Beach people who keep complaining, I don't come up there, I'm coming up there. I'm coming to get you. So another how to analyze properties. Again, the RSVP is required for these in-person events. And then also our last webinar coming up is through Next Mill Mastermind, the mastermind group I have created with Drea. That is coming up on August 1st, and that's going to be a free webinar too. So also, if you are trying to keep up with us on our events, right, the best way to actually be a part of our events, keep track of it, is text the word BPM RIA. So BPM RIA, that's the easiest way to know what upcoming events, and or if you're on our email list. So go ahead and do that. Again, we do have our August 10th and 11th quick start that is coming up. This is going to be, again, online via Zoom. Let me give me 1 second here. And because I know a lot of you guys are always interested, so I'm going to throw up a quick poll about our quick start. In this quick start, it's going to be 2 full days. I do a money back guarantee. If the first day you're like, it's not what you promised, I'll go ahead and give your money back. We're going to talk about assignments or contracts. We're going to talk about creative financing. We're going to talk about double closings. I'm going to have our contractor, Carl Schilly, on board. I'm going to have Kevin Thatcher from Independence Title talking about assignments and double closings. I am also going to have Jose Ramirez to set up your corporation. They'll talk a little bit about cost segregation and then the owner of RIAFAX. So if you're trying to find these off-market deals, go ahead and make sure you join our quick start. So, and then also, you guys know we do have our BPM membership. We are part of National RIA. When we're part of National RIA, you get a lot of great benefits through Home Depot. You get a lot of benefits through Rent Perfect. And you also get some benefits with Avis, Camel Plan, you name it, we got it. Our members last year, Ryan, just so you know, they spent over $8 million at Home Depot. So if you actually use the benefits, your membership is free. Also gets you into our in-person meetings. Our next in-person meeting is in August. at Nova University. So make sure you sign up for our membership, get all the free goodies, self-directed IRAs, Home Depot, Rent Perfect, Avis. Basically, your membership's free if you go ahead and join. So you can easily join on our website too. One of the things, and the last thing, you guys know that we have our one-on-one mentoring program. Our mentoring program is a little unique. I put up 100% of the money for the deals and we profit share. So pre-pandemic, guys, we were averaging close to $20,000 per wholesale deal. I'm going to call this, I don't know, post-pandemic. I don't know what you want to call it. We are averaging over $45,000 per wholesale deal. That's not even our rehabs. What's unique, you're tied into a mentor. They make money if you're making money. They're all former students. I've closed deals with liens violations. I paid for probate. And we've actually done webinars right now that there is a ton of people in pre-foreclosure in South Florida, and the properties are not listed too. So go ahead and book a discovery call. Just go to our website, BPM RIA, book a discovery call, ask me all the questions and see if you're a good fit for our mentoring program. And thanks again for filling out the poll. One of the things is that what we've also done now is I've tied into a third-party funding. The cool thing is if you have a 620 minimum credit score, $35,000 verifiable income, and you've had the same job for 2 years, you may qualify for funding to pay for your mentoring. So if you actually do this right, your mentoring can be, I'm not going to call it free, you're leveraging someone else's money to join the program, and then you're leveraging my money to do deals. So go ahead and book a call, and we look forward to having you guys too. So, and the last thing I'd like to do is thank all our vendor partners, our partners through National RIA. Without you guys, I would not be doing a great job. And you make my life easy too. So I do know I have a lot of vendor partners and all the great team members that we have within our organization. So thank you guys with announcements. I know I didn't do a great job as Alexa does because she is phenomenal at this. So she'll probably grade me a C- is for what I'm thinking on my announcements. And again, guys, today is going to be just a pretty chill, relaxing conversation about creative financing. And so I'm going to introduce Ryan. I've been, again, as I mentioned, I've been in this mastermind group for, I want to say, I guess it's probably about 5 years. And the importance of mastermind groups or continuing education is beyond important in building your business. I know I do well, and I have a lot of unfinished business. And when I meet someone like Ryan over the years, and he goes, "Hey, what about doing this? How come you don't do that?" And we whether it's having drinks at the masterminds, whether it's on the phone or webinars, I get a lot of great information. So Ryan, do you want to introduce who you are and where you're at?
For sure. Hello. My name's Ryan Garrison. I'm based out of Olympia, Washington. Um, I am a licensed broker with Real Broker. I also have my own portfolio of properties, rentals. Some of them I've flipped over to selling them on wraps. My favorite ways to buy properties are creatively, whether that's through a wrap or sub two or something like that. And I've been doing this for a while. I am an army of one right now. I don't have like a big team. Good and bad. I have low overhead, but I also, my attention goes towards a lot of my family stuff. And so my whole thing is lifestyle. So I try to put together deals and business in a way that I get to do the things I like to do, which uh, for right now in this season of life is a lot of coaching my kids' sports and going to games and tournaments and doing all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of my why and what I do right now. I'm in Sun River, Oregon, which you've never been, is absolutely beautiful. It's like this master plan community from the 70s that um, it's got bike trails all over, and there's like 3 or 4 golf courses in here, and there's like all sorts of water things. So it's like our family comes when we can, and it's just it's just good outdoors, great weather. It's like high desert kind of climate. And it's just an awesome place. If you're ever over in Central Oregon, I definitely recommend it. Check it out. But yeah, Nish, what would you like to run
Yeah,
into?
and guys, just like we're not teaching per se anything like we do normal webinars. Today's again more of a podcast kind of style, and actually a lot of Q&A. So, but I know you said you're a licensed agent. How long have you like? How did you go? Did you start being an agent first and then into investing, or vice versa?
Yes. Well, it gets into a little bit of a tangent. So out of college, pretty quickly, I got into the auto industry, and I was a secondary finance manager, so, special finance. We basically specialized in helping people with bankruptcies, repos, bad credit, all that kind of stuff. And I built up a pretty good sized sales team, doing that, and working for an auto group. And then in 2018, the opportunities I was accustomed to in that weren't as good as they once were. So I over that time I'd accumulated a few rentals, not that many by any means, but I had some rentals, and I was just like, you know what, screw this. The car business can have really bad hours. I was offered, a really good finance manager job, but I would have been working till 9 o'clock at night. And with young kids, I just wasn't, it was a deal breaker for me. Right. And so, when I said, hey, I'm going to go get into the real estate side of things, well, dealing with distressed sellers, it's the exact same people that I dealt with on a day-to-day basis, dealing with the auto industry, bankruptcies, repos, people of financial
Mhm.
distress, hardship, job loss, illness, all that kind of stuff. And so when I'm sitting at a table with these sellers, they're the same people, they're the same life situation. I can have these conversations with them, um, eh, more comfortably than a lot of people. And it's just I've always been kind of a deal engineer. So even in the car business, like working with the people and trying to help find a solution that works for them, but also ends up being profitable for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
And so like when you were talking about your rentals, did you let's kind of I'm gonna kind of walk this through. So your
yeah.
original rentals, did you do the traditional route of so when I used to buy rentals back
Hmm.
in the old days, right, pre recession, I'm talking 2008, where it was super easy on financing. How did you get
Hmm.
your first rentals? Did you just dump it into traditional ways or creative ways, or how did
Sure.
you? Yeah.
So the first two were both properties that, like mine and my wife's first house, I bought knowing I was going to make it a rental when we bought our next house. And then the next one, did the same thing. And then in that window, I had a I had someone respond to one of my mailers for bankruptcies in the car business, and this person, she was telling me that she made 3,500 bucks or $4,000 a month working for the state. And when you get to the part of the credit app, and you're like, okay, cool, and what's your mortgage payment? And she said $3,000. And I still remember her name. It was Aretha, and this was like in 2005. Um, and she's like, I'm like, that can't be right. You said you make 4,000 and your mortgage payment's 3,000. That's not right. And she's like, no, that's what it is, because she was doing an arrears payments trying to catch up.
Mhm.
And so what happened with it is she had like a leak in the shower or something, and had all sorts of mold come into the house. And so up to, like, knee level or like 3 feet off the ground or whatever, all the drywall is ripped out of the house. And
Wow.
so she had the fans on and all that stuff getting mitigated, but the insurance company told her to pound sand when it was time to repair it.
Mm.
So it turned into a thing where she owed, it wasn't even like, by today's dollars, it's going to sound like nothing. She owed, I think, 130 grand or something like that. And, um, I ended up actually working it out, doing a short sale on it at the end of the day, and got it for like 115. And, it took a while to do it, but that was my first experience with a short sale. I used a broker, so I went through that
Mhm.
route. So those first few deals were all just like normal purchases.
Yeah, when you
And
did
then,
like so I mean I know obviously you went from the car end of it, you get
mhm.
this mailer. So did you have like any kind of create like training besides like whether it's creative financing, probate, did you have any real estate investing training, or were you just kind of like I remember when I just kind of bought my first, and same thing that you
Mhm.
said, like I got financing and I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy this and I'm gonna rent it out. I didn't like 2003. I was just I'm gonna say this the wrong way. I was just a realtor, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
I didn't really know how to invest. So did you have any training yet at that point?
I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad, which doesn't really train you on
Okay.
anything. I had done, I'd gone through it was CDs, right? I don't remember if it was like Dolph DeRoos or it was one of those guys. And um, so just that when I didn't actually do a real training thing until I was out of the car business. And, um, I'd understood the principles of several different types of deals and just trying to put deals together, talking to people, right? But the first real one I did is I went to the local RIA here for a free 1 day seminar with a guy named you guys know out of Florida, Ron LeGrand, right? And so then the next thing I know, I'm on a 4 day quick start boot camp in Vegas, and and then doing their mentorship program and going through that. So that was the most formal like real estate transaction stuff that I went through basically on that to that
Yeah.
point.
And also just so you guys know, Ryan owns a RIA actually in Washington, in Olympia,
Hmm.
Washington. Your name, I forget what the name. I know you call this an Olympic
Soundria. Yeah,
sound.
we on your advice, we changed it from the Olympic or Olympia Real Estate Investors or that kind of thing, and we changed it to Soundria because it's more Puget Sound is where we are up
Yeah,
here. Website under construction, so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not. I'm trying to take your advice of some of the stuff we've talked about over Cadillac Margaritas and trying to figure out how to um, how to better serve my group.
yeah, exactly. No, and it's pretty cool. Just so you guys know, is that the knowledge that Ryan has is like pretty impressive, and I've been just very fortunate to bend his ear, and that's why we're actually doing this webinar. And as typical South Florida, I gave him a bait and switch. I told him there'd be a panel. The panel is him
Did.
and I. So I surprised him today. I forgot I said it would be a panel. So that we are a panel. So it's not a total bait and switch, but that's how we roll here in Florida, right? We're going to promise you bigger things and maybe not
Hmm.
deliver as much. So like when you got, all right, let's really talk about the state of Washington, right? So you did your first short sale. So how
Hmm.
did you let's define what creative financing is, because I do see there might be some newbies that have no idea what creative financing. So do you want to give like a general outline of what we consider creative financing or some different
Yeah, I
types?
mean, a really short definition might be anything but a traditional bank sale, right? Like where you're bringing money from somewhere else. That money can be coming from usually in my case it's coming from the seller, or I may be doing something where I'm starting to make the payments of their existing mortgage and still deeding the property to myself. So that would be more of a sub two type situation. I'm starting to get a little bit more cautious on that, and so I'm more net it still works out the same, but I'm still more inclined to go into like purchasing it on a wrap, but mirroring the terms of the underlying debt right now. I just think there's some legislation in the works in different parts of the country, and I'm in a very liberal state, so I'm sure they're going to do something to screw with
Yeah.
people.
I'm
So,
going to dumb it down what you just said, just in general. I
mhm,
call it a niche proof. Meaning
perfect.
sometimes we always talk, I know being in the industry, we'll use different terminology that they might not know yet, whether it's sub two or on that portion. So one of the things is, right, so he's right. It's anything that's not traditional financing, right? You're not doing a conventional loan, you're not doing bank statements. And the idea is like when I first started was it was always like, hey, here's my cash offer. And if I talk to a realtor, stop lowballing me. So go ahead and put in the chat. I'm kind of curious to see how many of you guys have done any kind of creative financing deals. And if you had, go ahead and put in the chat what you've done, because I'm kind of curious to see what our experience on audience is. And the reason you want to add this to your tool belt. What I always say, if you're a one-trick pony, meaning, hey, this is my cash offer and that's it, you're gonna lose a lot of deals to people like Ryan and myself. I'm not saying that we're always going to do creative financing deals, uh, and it's also an option. They might say, and I've had this happen many times, where it's an older couple and they're like, I'm trying to explain all these other options, whether seller financing, sub two, or anything out there. and they have no idea. And they said, "Hey, Anish, what was that cash offer?" And said, "I'd rather take that." So one of the questions is, he's in the state of Washington. So their laws, and he's exactly, I'm not going to get into politics. I'll try to keep that on the back end of a little bit. What we are seeing, like the liberal states, and I'm going to pick Washington. I'm going to pick New Jersey, even though I'm from New Jersey, New York, California, some of the
Illinois.
Illinois. What
Mhm.
what other states that are challenges for landlords? That's what I'm going to use. So they're way more tenant or yeah, tenant friendly is probably the easiest way I could say that. So let's talk about your state specifically,
Mhm.
right? So actually, let me go back. Like you did a couple short sales. Then you started doing some creative financing deals. Let's talk about that first, and then we'll talk about what's happening in Washington State. And so, what kind of creative financing deals have you done?
Well, so I started the first few deals I did right after I burned the boats were just traditional wholesale deals. But then I used some of that money for marketing and just I'm more so here, just like you said, I try to think of it as like a Swiss Army knife. So if I don't, if I walk into someone's house, to fix something and I only have a hammer, how many things can I actually fix, right? Like I feel like I need to be able to, kind of like a doctor approaches a patient. You don't just walk in and say, "Where's my prescription for Vicodin?" Right? Like you have to explain you have
Hope
to tell him
not.
what's going on. He's gonna try to discover and find what your symptoms are, get to the bottom of it, and then present what he thinks is the best solution. Um, and so gosh, yeah, the first couple deals after the wholesale deals, I did some sub two deals, and I mean, this was even going into Facebook marketing.
Yeah.
Um,
So you
there,
want to
there,
explain what a sub two deal is, just in
yeah,
case.
absolutely. So, the seller owes, okay, let's back up. Everybody who goes to sell a house traditionally, when they talk to an agent, typically the agent is going to say, "Hey, yeah, I think we can list your house for this if you fix this and do this and fix this and paint this a different color and go through these things." And then also we're going to have all the showings. We're going to put it on the market, have all the showings, and they're going to have the inspection period. They're going to close on the seller's date. The financing could fall through. The appraisal may come in off. The inspection may discover a bunch of more things that they want you to fix. And for a lot of people, that's just overwhelming. It's too much. They're mentally done. And so the sub two option, they still have a mortgage in place.
Right. So Bank of
Um,
America they have a mortgage with Bank of America for
mhm.
200,000.
Right? And you come in as the solution. Usually it doesn't work if they have a ton of equity. So if they owe 100,000 and it's worth 300,000, sub two is probably not the best solution for them, and it's not going to serve them. So it's as an example, one of these deals with the first and the second. So I took them both over subject to. Um, she owed about 210. Retail on the market fixed up would have been low threes, but it wasn't fixed up, right? Everything was dated. There's a lot of deferred maintenance, and but I was able to lock up financing around 4% on these payments, and the payment was lower. The other part of this is your exit strategy. If my exit strategy is to rent it out, those payments got to have some cash flow between what the rent amount is going to be and those payments. So,
Yeah.
um,
So for you,
and
like a couple of quick questions on that, right? You would
mhm,
never go so subject to guys is he's taking over the mortgage payments. The advantage
mhm,
is hopefully they refinanced in the last couple of years and they got a low rate. So Ryan's taking advantage of maybe they got 3.5% or 4% interest rate is one advantage, right? The lower payment. Number two is less money out of your pocket, right? On the $210,000, that's money you
mhm.
don't have to come up with, whether it's hard money or some other traditional financing, correct? Those
Yeah,
are
and and I don't have to go and use my credit. I
that's
don't
what I was
have to
thinking.
go, yeah, I don't have to use my credit, and I don't have to go with the down payment that they want. I go with the down payment I negotiate with into the deal. Um, and I don't have to go get an appraisal. I don't have to, so it on my end it works great. And if in the right circumstance, it can be a win-win. but again, it's not every
Yep.
circumstance.
And you don't do I'm asking some of the questions I know that I already know you. You would never go into a subject to or take over mortgages in a negative cash flow, would you?
If there was enough equity, if
Okay.
there was a lot of equity, maybe. The only times I could see that happening, if you had a house that had a subdividable piece of land with it.
Hmm.
Okay, so now the house itself may rent for less than your payment, but I have this other exit strategy I'm dealing with these 10 lots. I'm gonna split, right? Something like that could make sense. But yeah, it's not my goal. My goal is cash flow for sure.
What do you say about people? So generally speaking, when someone signs a mortgage, there's a due on sale clause whenever it transfers ownership. I can tell you in all the years that I've been doing this, I feel like there was only maybe one or two times I've ever heard someone get a due on sale clause
Hmm.
on that portion. Are you worried or, you know, like I know some people will say, "Oh my God, you're going to change it. The bank's going to ask for this." And what I can tell you from my experience is, if I was going to pay Ryan's electric bill, they're not going to see if it came from Ryan or from me, like it went through.
Hmm.
So, well, like your thoughts or how you feel about due on sale clauses?
Sure. So one of those properties I bought, I did it using the trust method, which essentially means the seller puts the property into a trust, then assigns the beneficial interest of that trust to, your entity, right? So
Yep.
you're gonna have a trustee, which is whether that be a person, a lawyer, or one of your entities, um, be the trustee of that trust that's created. Then the beneficiary, which is her at first, um, now is there, she's assigning her beneficial interest of that trust to your other entity, right? And I know this gets into the weeds a lot, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
simplify. Um, and it was hard for me to kind of grasp at first. I've only done one like this because it gets complicated.
Yep.
And in that scenario, that's the best way I know of to avoid the
Yep.
due on sale clause
I'm
because
doing that right now. So I agree with
yeah,
you. And just so you guys know, I should have gave my disclaimer up front, right? We're not giving you any legal advice. This is
financial advice, CPA, not a
you got
plumber.
it. One
Um,
reowner to another reowner.
mhm.
Absolutely. These are some of the strategies that we're using, but he's right. Like I'm doing the same thing with a trust. And that's what my attorney said. That'd
So
probably be the easiest way.
So in Florida, I believe you can call it a land trust.
It
It
is
is
land
not
trust.
called that. It is not called that everywhere. And that was Ron LeGrand was where in that group was where I got that idea. But there were some issues. So here in Washington, one thing that just, for lack of a better term, just sucks balls is the we have a transfer fee of it's almost 2%. So every time there's a transfer of ownership in the property, they get you coming and going. Well, on a $500,000 house, that's 10 grand additional that you got to like stroke to the state, right? And it happens with trusts too, if they are even technically,
Hmm.
the assignment of that beneficial interest
It's not.
is it's an event of transfer that is supposed to have that transfer fee. Now, maybe that if that was for maybe someone forgot to file it and it didn't get like, it's just in a drawer somewhere. Well, I mean, that could theoretically slow that down, but eventually it's going to have to get paid,
Yeah,
right?
what I'm gonna say. So what I'm gonna tell everyone, he's exactly right. It's the same thing in Florida. Anytime there's transfer ownership, there's supposed to be stamps I have to pay to the county, and I'll leave that up to you. I'm not going to advise anyone what they should or should not do. I do know the Marty Kier, the property appraiser. What they're going to tell you is anytime that there is a transfer, you are supposed to pay stamps, and I'll leave it at
Mhm.
that.
What are stamps? Um, so I'm not going to get into the Florida stuff, but I would say this. So here's the counter argument of it too, is that when Anish puts his property into his land trust, that's his property and he's doing it for estate planning purposes. Should there be a tax on that? The ownership did not change, right? So it's into this trust. Now, when it's in the trust, if he later goes into he assigns his beneficial interest Well, the ownership's still in the trust he created. So, and that's where it's a little bit of a gray area, and it's kind of like if you're speeding in the freeway, you're going over the speed limit. In Florida, you guys go like 50 miles an hour over the speed limit. So I don't even know if that's a real analogy, but up here we're more reasonable. And so if they're going, 10 or 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, that's their personal choice, and it can work or not work depending on what happens in the cop you run into.
Yep. And so like again, this is just the way. So I remember when we were sitting in at one of the mastermind groups and we're having some cocktails, and I said, man, it's so hard in my market to do subject to deals. And you said it's really hard in my market too. And here's a bunch I just did. So
Hmm.
what do you tell people, right? I know most of the guys on this call are in Florida.
Yeah,
Um, like what challenges, right? Beginning, you have to understand it first, right? I always tell people if you can't understand it, how are you going to explain it? Especially to someone that's rather new to real estate or they've only bought one house in their life.
sure. I think first and foremost, you first before you go too far into it, you're
Mhm.
not out hunting for sub two deals.
Correct.
You're out looking for sellers that need help, that need a solution and need you to be a solution. So that being said, as you build your knowledge base and your toolbox, you're able to give them more solutions. I would just say that everything starts with the sales end of it to me, and to me that
Mhm.
means not talking, but listening, asking good questions, and understanding what the sellers what they're going through and what might be helpful for them based on where they want to end up, right?
Yeah.
And so that I would say in Florida, same thing. It doesn't matter because you can sub to a $2 million house.
Yep.
You can. Now it doesn't mean you're going to go on the listings and then be like, oh, cool, I'm going to buy all these properties sub two. No, it doesn't work like that. It all comes to a seller. I know people have been successful at buying stuff on the market sub two. I'm not one of them. I don't even try. Um, you know, I go direct to seller because again, I'm just looking for the right exit strategy. So maybe it's wholesale. Maybe I'm a broker with Real Broker. Um, I can list it and offer listing services. And then also I can help. Now, in addition, if a seller's outside of my market or I just don't get along with them or whatever reason I'm unavailable, I have that option also of doing a referral to another broker, and I can do it nationally. I've gotten a referral on a $2 million Hawaii property because of my national network of brokers. So I'm able to quickly find a good broker to put them with, and then still make something on the other end. So it's just monetizing your leads and getting your lead flow going to have the conversations.
Yeah. What do you do with people like obviously on the subject too? I know we're focusing on one method right now. And at the same time, how do you get the seller to trust you, right? Like, hey, you just met me. Like, what are some best practices that that's worked for you?
I think it starts with being a trustworthy person, right? And um, if you can, uh, having those conversations, you don't want to be in a rush to try to close them. You don't want to be in a rush to get them under contract. I'm I'm a kind of a reluctant buyer because I don't know if the deal makes sense for me. Look, at the end of the day, the numbers we come up with, the terms we come up with have to work for you, and they also have to work for me.
Yeah.
I don't buy every house I look at. I don't even try to because not everyone's a fit. But I can, if this house doesn't make sense for me to purchase, I promise you'll be better from having me been here because I'll help direct you in the right direction. And maybe that's, and I'm different because I don't say I'm going to close on your house and I'm not. I'm I have a RIA group with a bunch of flippers and a bunch of buyers. And if it doesn't make sense for me, I'm gonna go that direction and work with my group, and I'll help you get a buyer that maybe this deal works better for.
Yeah, and I do the same thing, right? So it's really important. A lot of people, investors that we see, right? Oh, I'm going to close on your house, and they're saying all this stuff, and they're really not, right? The numbers, like as an expert or a true investor, we know our numbers. I know you're a hardcore number guy, just like me. If the numbers are outrageous, it doesn't make sense. I'm not going to tell them that. I'll give them the other options, and sometimes, especially in this market that we've seen here, it's not. It's different from a year ago, right? A year ago, like there were way more buyers. Now there's less buyers. It's a little bit leveling off in our market, depending on price points. I've seen a lot of reductions in there too. Again, the trust is important. Some of the things that I've used also is, hey, I'm going to take over your property and I'm going to put X amount to fix it. Or I'm going to put 40 grand, I'm going to put a new roof on it, I'm going to do these things. I'm not going to walk away, right? So sometimes it gives
Mhm.
them that trust. I know, same thing, you have a lot of experience. Hey, do you want to speak to some of the other people I worked with? Because the key I want you guys to understand is that Brian's always thinking a win-win. It's not what's best for me, what's best for them and me to make it a win-win. And you have a lot of tools in your tool belt, just like I do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I'll tell you this too, Anish, and this goes into kind of some of the not everything's warm and fuzzy with this stuff, right? There's negative stuff in real estate too. And with these creative deals, one thing you have to be aware of and just prepare for, you're getting into a relationship with that seller, even though that you bought the house subject to, you're in a relationship with them for a longer term than just the closing because they still have that mortgage on their credit in their name. And even though you're bailing them out right now and they may feel like you're the greatest thing in the world, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, maybe they have a different spouse, maybe their job situation changed, and their mortgage broker that they go talk to says, "Hey, what's this mortgage on your credit?" And they don't explain it in the right way. Um, and he's like, "Oh, you sold that? Well, that should get that gone. We should call the bank," or something like that. That's how a due on sale clause really
Yeah.
can get pulled, right?
I didn't
And
even think
so
of that.
you
Yeah.
have to be you have to keep in mind these people you're getting in a relationship with, um, that you still have the same goals because once and so there's another guru, um, that he says he never cashes out his sub two sellers completely until until he's out of the deal because there has to be something for them at the end, like the carrot at the end of the stick, rather than just right now, here's your 10 grand for moving money and see you later, and I make payments on your mortgage now. I've done that, and I definitely have some fears about them turning south on me, at a
Yeah.
certain point, and it can totally happen. Um, and so that's part of the reason I've kind of shifted my philosophy towards, purchasing on the wrap instead of the sub two. And I know other investors that they will only buy lease options and not the sub two purchase, because of that.
Yep. And we've done a lot of, I've had a couple of people talk about creative financing. There's some other best practices on the insurance, how you want to be added on. Also, so there are a lot of mechanics on it. Ryan, do you mind actually in the chat just putting your information? There's a couple of people that want your information
Sure.
or email,
Best
whatever.
best place. I have a little URL, REI Ryan here. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Um,
That way they can. And guys, be respectful too. Just don't bombard them with 8 trillion questions. Otherwise, I'll never have him come back again
yeah.
on that end of it. So, and I know you're more than gracious, and at the same time, you know, uh,
Yeah, and if you guys get any value out of the stuff I'm sharing with you, I don't have anything to sell you. I do. Just leave me a review on Google. There's a link
yeah,
there, and that would don't you don't have to lie and say that like I bought your house and whatever kind of thing. Like, if you think if I bring reasonable value and somewhat intelligent
yeah.
and might be able to help people in tough situations, that's
Yeah, and
something like
we'll make
that's great.
sure on our thank you email, you'll send me a link and we'll send a link out to all the viewers to make sure you give them a 5-star review and hopefully and put in there if you learned one thing at least. Again, these reviews are important for his organization and mine. So it's just a good end of it to really spread the word out there. So let's hit some of the questions and before we
Sure,
keep
let's do
a
it.
little bit too. So I know Jeff's asking, have you done contract for deed? And how did it work out?
So I have some that I'm selling contract for deed
You want to
from.
explain what
So
contract for deed
sure,
is?
absolutely. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
sorry.
Now again, this is one of those things too that it depends on where you are. So a contract for deed, a land contract, and here they call it a real estate contract are all the same thing. Um, So it means instead of a traditional note and deed of trust, you have a contract that says when you're done making these payments, you get the deed. So I like contract for deed the most in the name because it's the most literal. I fulfill my contract, then I get the deed. You still own it, but you don't own it quite as solidly as a traditional mortgage, right? I Some investors are maybe in the perfect circumstance that's like very lucrative. I would do that. But for the most part, I'll sell on it because here it's a 90-day forfeiture process if the buyer on the contract for deed doesn't fulfill his obligations. But the foreclosure is a long time and more expensive and all that.
Yeah, and I mean, the other I thought that was important is remember each state is different, so you want to make sure what's going on the foreclosure rules. Like, there's a lot of moving parts, so it's not one size fits all. Is what I'm going to tell everyone, depending on the state.
And I feel like Texas, kind of like Texas doesn't like lease options. Texas, I feel like they have some contract for deed laws too, and there could be some others. Because what happens, all it takes is one shitty investor that just screws a bunch of people over, and then the next thing you know, the laws get a lot tougher. And that's what happened, I think, in Texas with the lease options, and I think maybe with the contract for deed stuff too.
Yep, got it. Yeah, and so let's talk about what a wrap is. I know we've used that, and
Sure.
then I have a question from Ali about a wrap. So, do you want to give an example of one of the wraps you may have done, or what a wrap
Yeah,
is?
sure. Yeah, for sure. So, you can buy or sell on a wrap. And so a wrap mortgage is essentially, let's just take a subject to example. I'll take another one. I purchased a property on owner finance for 275, and my terms on that were 2.25% that I purchased on, right? My payments were, gosh, I don't know, $1,000, let's just say.
You negotiate 2.25 with the
Yeah,
seller? Yeah,
if
okay.
if if I had time, I think I could have got zero, but I was in a hurry that day. Um, but that doesn't matter for right now. But
Yeah.
so so the thing was, um, it was just a mobile home on an acre and it had a shop and it wasn't anything too special, but I fixed it up, spent a little bit of money on it, and then I sold it for 3.75, or I'm sorry, I sold it for 375 at 8%. So I still owe the 225 at I'm sorry, I still owe the 275 at the lower interest rate in my $1,000 payment, right? I still owe that. That's my responsibility. But I have another loan that wraps around that loan, the 375 at, 8%, which is a $2,800 payment,
Yeah.
right?
So it's the whole, guys, just so you know, it's the whole payment. It's
Right.
not just the
So
difference.
So they make me the 2,800 payment, I make the $1,000 payment, and I have that spread in between arbitrage, right? And so that essentially gets me the cash flow of a rental. And because of where I live and how few rights I have as a landlord, I'm trying to do more deals like that for cash flow instead of being a single family house landlord.
Right, exactly. So this will walk into Ali's question. What do you do if the sub to the seller files bankruptcy after you've taken the property or sold it on a wrap?
Luckily, it hasn't happened to me. Um, I would s- I would say that I've seen this question pop up with some of the gurus that are out there, and I would say that first off, just because they file does not mean the house like goes away. Like even if I live in a house and I file bankruptcy and that's one of the debts, it doesn't just immediately go away. Some things can happen. I think the hardest part with it is once that house, that creditor gets notified of that bankruptcy filing by that original borrower, then they stop taking your payments,
Right,
right? And so you need to start working with maybe even their bankruptcy attorney, but that house is sold. You've been making the payments. You're gonna have to talk to the mortgage company and say, hey, look, this house I own, the debt was with someone else, but we were making, the payments. And you may just have to kind of go through it. And at first, the first person you talk to is like a low level, slightly above minimum wage employee usually, and they're not going to understand what you're talking about.
Yep.
And so you have to kind of work your way up and talk to the manager and talk to someone because the bank does not want to own your house.
Correct.
And I would just say that it's going to be a little complicated, but there's plenty of instances where it's worked for other investors and they've gotten through it and they keep going business as usual.
Yeah, I mean, the other stuff like on some of the stuff too, like I know the due on sale clause doesn't happen very often and rare,
Hmm.
and I still have exit strategies just in case.
Hmm.
If I have to sell it, if I have to pay it off, do I have
Hmm.
money set aside to like magically, like, hey, they want their money. Hey, within 30 days I could get it to them.
Hmm.
And that's just for me, my own personal peace of mind. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that.
Other lines of credit, a fund, a life insurance policy you can cash out, a retirement account you can pull the money from and get it, or you refinance it.
Yeah,
Like if I'm selling it on a lease option and I have a renter there, I can go try to get a DSCR loan. The rates might not be what they once were, but it's still doable,
yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
So,
So yeah, let's talk about. I know we've been pushing sub two for a little bit. Again, the advantages you're taking advantage of the low rate. It's
mhm,
not on your credit. Hopefully, you could do the arbitrage if you add it as a wrap.
mhm,
Again, you could buy more properties. Generally speaking, you may upgrade it. All the above. So there are some massive advantages. The negatives, right, is a due on sale clause. They have to trust you, right?
mhm.
Or if you don't explain to them that you're buying this house and they need it off their credit, like exactly what you said, that it sounds good today, maybe they didn't grasp it. And
Yeah,
6 months later, they want to buy a house.
and they can. Now and this is it. I mean, the confusion factor is real, and I have a problem sometimes where I might over explain things that I shouldn't have. And so
Yeah,
then, sometimes the confusion factor is definitely real, but I worry not disclosing enough, and then they feel like you didn't explain that to me. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And so, um, but yeah, if you have proof, you can talk to a mortgage broker. If they have proof someone else has been making this payment for X amount of time, whether that's 6 months or a year, it starts not counting towards their debt. And it
yeah. It's usually 12
initially,
months. It's usually
yeah,
12
well,
months.
and it's tiered a little bit. So like I don't remember if it's 6 months or 12 months. It's like they'll go 75% or 50%, and then once it hits like that longer period, whether it's 1 year or 2 years, and it might change a little bit with lender, or if
Yeah,
you're going like FHA or whatever. Um, but it can it can be removed from your debt equation.
yeah, exactly.
But I'm
On
not a lawyer and I'm not a mortgage broker, so.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Are you on those, or do you have a third party doing the payments, or are you doing that yourself? I know it's
So
just
yeah,
curious.
so on the wraps, in the seller financing, I use a third party servicer and it's cheap. It's like $20 a month or something like that for the per loan. Um, and that helps with the accounting, it helps with the payoff, it helps with them holding the signed. So, look, we didn't even get into this. So let's say that I sign a seller finance contract with Anish and he moves to Colombia full time, right? And I go and I pay off my loan and he's gone. I can't find him, and I'm not flying to Colombia. And where would I find him? So, but my loan's paid off, and then I want to sell the property, but then the title company says, "Well, you got this mortgage, and we don't have proof it's paid in full. We don't have a release from the lender. What do you do?"
Yep,
Right? And so the what if your attorney that's helping you structure your deal and you talk with them, you want to get a signed release from Anish and have the servicer hold it or the lawyer if they're processing stuff. And you want to have it held so that when it is paid off, by that third party can release it and record the release.
yep,
Um,
makes sense on
but
that. So yeah, you want to make sure on that. And let's kind of talk about like on the lease options and
sure.
do you want to talk about I know your deals that you've worked on and
Hmm.
how you got into it, or what is a lease option first,
Sure.
and then we'll
It's
kind of go
it's
through the deals that you've been working on.
it's very literal. Lease. You have a lease with the person for X number of years, and you have an option to buy. If it's done correctly, it's going to be usually two separate documents, not like two documents merged into one. But the option basically says if they fulfill the lease, they can buy the property, um, X dollars within a certain amount of time. So, and by the way, I have one right now that unfortunately the buyer is exercising their option to buy, and I have to figure out what I'm going to do with those funds. I got to dump them into either a 1031 or find some other alternative investment. I had another one earlier this year, so that one I lost about 2 grand a month in cash flow. This one's less, but it's still annoying, and I don't want to have too many sales on my taxes in 1 year. So I'm looking for short-term rental quality seller financing that I can put a reasonable amount of money down and do a 1031 exchange if anyone has an off-market deal like that. Hit
There
me
you
up.
go. Look at that.
So
You guys.
um but yeah, so the lease option, the option consideration now is what people will call a down payment, but for contractual and legal purposes, don't call it a down payment. It's the money they pay up front to buy the option, the right to buy the house. So it
Right.
could
Like
be,
they're basically locking in the price. And
mhm,
what's really key, what's really important is you're not calling it a deposit or a down payment.
mhm,
Those are key. Even though they might I put $5,000 with you, it's important what you call it. And you want to call it an option fee.
mhm. Yep. And so that option consideration, you don't have to have a lease to have an option. Anish, I'm going to give you 10 grand or whatever, and it gives me the right to buy your house for $1 million within the next 15 years,
Yeah.
or whatever's turned around. But what that means is he can't go sell it to somebody else. And so it's locked up. His options are limited to me. And for that, there's gonna be a cost. And so what happens with that, I try, it's gotten harder as prices have gone up, but I always would try to get close to 10%, be somewhere in 5 to 10% of the purchase price we'd agreed to for the option consideration. So, on a $500,000 house, my goal would be 50 grand, but I wouldn't always get that.
Yeah.
Um,
What's your
and
price points? I know what you like in your area. So it gives our viewers, it's not cheap.
I've got the median price is about 475
Got it. Yeah.
to give you kind of and I've got some stuff
Yeah.
cheaper
We're
and some
closer
stuff
to
more
six
expensive.
now. It's crazy,
Yeah,
but yeah, we're like
yeah,
that's what I'm saying is this is not and I know some of you guys might invest in cheaper markets like Ohio or Michigan. And so we're talking, that's why I thought it's important for our viewers that it's not these other second or tertiary markets where prices are cheaper. So we're to an extent equivalent on price point. So that's why it's
yeah,
important.
for sure. Well, and here's something else I'm doing right now that maybe give you an idea. You're creative. I'm in Olympia, Washington, for whoever the anonymous Mr. Anonymous was. Um, the you don't have to have a long-term exit strategy on creative finance. I mean, I like it when I can, right? If I could have 2% for 50 years, that'd be great. But I have one right now that it was a normal wholesale type probate situation, and they didn't need the money right now. Both the husband and wife worked, right? They have jobs. They don't need the money right this minute. They just want to be done with the house. It was a hoarder situation, and they spent a whole year cleaning it up. They're like,
Mhm.
"We're done here." So they liked me. They liked me more than the other wholesaler they were talking to, and they let me buy it. I had to put just a little bit of money down so they could close out some of the credit accounts, and I got 0% interest and a 12-month balloon payment and no payments. So instead
Right,
of having to go
wait.
to
I just want to make sure everyone heard what you just said. 0% down,
no, 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 no. I had a little bit of money down. I think
a
I put
little bit
20
down,
grand down.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, 0% interest,
Hmm.
right? And 12 months of no payments.
12 months, no payments. I got a balloon payment, which I want to try to renegotiate because of these other sales. Um, I don't want to have the short-term cap gains when I flip it, right? And so I kind of want to get past the year to before I sell it and exit it. If not, I have decision to make. It's just about done now with the flip, and so I can get it on the market, I can sell it, or I can do a DSCR loan if they won't extend 6 months, right? And and then I go and hang on. So I don't. So if I can hold on to the property more than 12 months, my tax situation changes on that sale.
Right.
So um, and yeah, I'll let you handle that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
So
I would just say go ahead.
yeah, let's talk about the lease options the ones
Sure.
did you just do them? prior, like it was right before the pandemic, right? The three
Right
houses.
at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah. Can
Yeah,
we
it
kind of
started.
walk through like what you had three houses that you did lease off?
I did a few, something like that. I don't,
Some
yeah,
of that.
three,
I'm just
something,
thinking.
yeah. So, um, and
And
I learned things as I went, like things that got missed, right? Um, and so that's probably four or five. Um, but I'm, I'll be honest, I am a lazy landlord. I am not good. I'm not good. I'm not the guy that's going to go and like inspect a property every 3 months and do that kind of thing, right? I figure, hey, these people put 40 grand down. They're going to take care of the place. And it, believe it or not, it doesn't always go that way. Um, and so but I have had luck with the ones that they're on the wraparound. They're more of an ownership situation. They do technically own the property. Um, they've taken better care of the properties. It's weird how that works, right? And so as I'm trying to be less involved and I don't want to be inspecting houses or going and doing that kind of thing, um, that's the direction I'm going. The lease options I did. Um, so essentially, let's just say I can kind of break down a little bit. Property today is worth 300,000. I will work it out with the seller, where basically their option price would go up every year. So next, if you buy it, if you buy it after a year, it's going to be 320. You buy it after 2 years, it's going to be 340. You buy it after whatever. And that seemed like it was great, except I never saw appreciation like we did during the beginning of COVID. So I learned to include in my lease options some sort of like escape clause, that not an escape clause, but a revaluation. So in the event the seller wants to pay for an appraisal, then and get an actual appraisal, then the buyer could buy it for a percentage of that appraised value. Not 100%, not full value, but like if now I have one right now, and this one is one that was from before I figured that out. Um, their option price, if they buy it before the end of September, is like 414, and they put 35 grand down. So take that off of that. If after the end of September it goes to like 430 or something like that. Um, but right now the Zillow is almost 500,
mm,
and I'm like, "Argh," it just
yeah.
kills me, right? Like, and so granted, I'm fulfilling my
Yeah.
end of the
I would have never
contract and
known that
everything,
either. I would have done
right?
the
And I was
same
just
thing.
like,
So
because like
guys,
everything seemed fine, but it was like 4 years ago, right? So it was
yeah,
like,
the key is like, remember, if you did it right in the beginning of the pandemic and you imagine you had this as a strategy, let's use that.
mhm,
And now you did a bunch of lease options. And I'm just using our market, right? We've gone up anywhere from, I want to say 30 to 50% in some
mhm,
markets. Imagine locking that down, and now you have the option to buy that,
mhm,
and then you could sell or finance it. So you could use. I know we were talking about different strategies on creative financing. I know you specifically use multiple, like whether it's a wrap, seller financing, lease option, like it's you could do these individually and you could do these together also
mhm.
as part of your tool belt.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could even get into seller seconds of where the seller's carrying the second mortgage, but the first mortgage you go through a typical lender, they want 20% down, and you work out a way to do that. So the seller takes the 20% down. You're still zero out
Yep.
of your pocket. Or there's what I try to tell people is you can work it out on the back of a napkin.
Yep.
Um, you don't have to have a preset structure. Everyone's always wanting like a preset. Well, what interest rate do you do that at? And
Yeah.
what percentage of LTV? And it's like, no, it's whatever you come to an agreement with the
Correct.
seller. And the more they like you, the more they trust you, the more they want you to win, the
Yep.
better chance you have of putting together a great deal. I have a friend that does this with multifamily, so it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be single family houses. It goes to people that own apartment buildings, like, various
Yep.
sizes, and finds out what makes them tick. And when at the end of the day they like him enough that they want to help him, go on to his and build his portfolio.
I remember in our mastermind group, they were talking about Note School, which we've
Mhm,
had Eddie speak in the past, where they bought one third of the notes. I don't know if you remember when they mentioned that.
mhm,
Andy mentioned that actually. One third of the notes had 0% down and 0% interest. My point is
mhm,
everything's negotiable, right? On our sometimes, hey, Brian, you really want your price? I could do your price, but these are my terms,
Hmm.
right? Or, okay, I want to make a little bit of interest rate, or I want to, and a lot of times like what I feel like a lot of people miss is what's the need for the seller. So the one I'm looking at right now, that subject to deal, he wants to take the extra cash and he wants to buy something up north, like Lakeland or Haines, somewhere that's cheaper. And for me, I looked at the numbers. I'll be all in at 455. The house is probably worth about 540. And he's
Hmm.
ecstatic, right? He's like, listen, we're retiring. I don't care if you take over my more. I'm not buying anything, any of that other good stuff. And it's a win-win. He's like, I just need this amount of money. And for me, I'm like, listen, you could not only that, you could stay in the house, you could pay me rent until you buy your house. And he's,
Hmm.
the other big thing for him was he's been in the house since 1997. As a realtor, he was going to give it to me as a listing. He didn't want his neighbors to know that he's selling the house. He didn't want to make any repairs. The house, luckily, is in great, in good care, so I don't really have to put much money in. And like it's funny, like you just have to listen to what they need
Hmm.
versus, yeah, like exactly what you said. Like I'm going to list it. They're going to have the people come in, the appraisal, is there financing, inspection, all the above, and
Right.
that
And
can kill
for me,
deals.
one of my one of my things is I like to see the solution very early in the
Hmm.
conversation. And I shoot myself in the foot sometimes because I'm like, oh yeah, cool, we'll just do this. It meets all your problems. No worries, we got it. Like we got this for you. We'll move on to your next thing. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's kind of like dating where, you're maybe meeting a girl at the bar and then you're immediately saying, you know what, I think we fit. Let's go home together. Right. And it's not quite there yet. You have to nurture the relationship. You have to build the trust. You have to make it so that you guys are vibing more and I definitely, have to, that's one thing I always have to like slow down on a little bit and
Yeah,
focus more on that relationship building part of it. And and I reflect on ones that I'm like, that's one I definitely should have got, and why
yeah.
didn't I, and that kind of thing. And it's presenting the solutions too early.
Yeah.
Um,
Do
and
you like
so,
when you actually go to a house like a homeowner and you're
mhm.
talking for the first time, are you giving like a few solutions on your first visit or you're kind of feeling them out to see like what does that process look like for
Sure.
you?
Well, usually if it's at home, I've already talked to them a few times before
Yeah.
going to that home visit. And so I have a pretty good idea before that. Part is making sure I don't go too deep into those before that point.
Mhm.
But in person, hopefully I'm only meeting them in person the one time. Um, and then trying to map it out. And usually I'll have like a pre-printed, when I come to an appointment, I'll have pre-printed listing docs in case we go that direction with the conversation. I'll have pre-printed generic generic purchase and sale wholesale docs, but I also have like a blank addendum, and the blank addendum is what I'll use to outline the terms that we come up with for the note, and then that's what I'll give to the attorney or the title company, and then we'll work out the rest of the details once they're under contract, right?
Yep. Yep. Makes sense. And Ken, I know you're asking what's an exit strategy with sub two properties. It could be a bunch,
A whole
right?
bunch.
A whole bunch.
Dep
Okay.
Depends on the deal. Um, and so I had one and this is the one that she's buying me out on. Um, Originally it was a 2% loan. And I was like, this is awesome, except I knew it was in an arm. And so the problem was every year it goes up 1% right now. And so I think now we're at 5. It might be we're at 4 going to 5 or 5 going to 6, one of the two. And and so in that scenario, okay, my exit strategy is going to be I got to figure something else out because I don't like paying 6% interest. But what are your options right now? Well, sell it like I am, or take money from a different property or a different sale and then paying it off. I could continue to rent it, but I'm locked in on a lease. So that was another one I put in on my future lease option contracts, kind of like what's it called, Home Partners.
Hmm.
So if you ever look at try to structure a deal on their website, it is nasty. So I'll show my buyers the Home Partners. Here's what a house that's similar price. Here's what the terms would be for Home Partners. Your payment goes up like $300 next year and like $300 the year after that. Your price of the property goes up like 50 grand next year, and so that kind of thing. And it's just super aggressive. So I'm like, hey, look, I'm only going up this much. My payment's only going up this much, and I would start doing that where my payment goes up a little bit every year too. Not knowing, it was more of just good for me, but not realizing, Jesus Christ, insurance and taxes went up a lot the last few years.
Yeah.
And so trying to offset that. So my cash flow on those properties that didn't have a bump, my cash flow got tighter every year.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. So you can do these on arms. It's a good point that you're bringing up. It doesn't have to be fixed rates. And exactly what Ryan's saying is sometimes you got to check as rates, we've seen in our market, rates go up. You have to make sure you know that, right? Usually there's caps that, hey, the rate could only go up 2% or 3% a year, and it caps out. So you can do those deals, but you want to make sure you do have an exit strategy when it comes closer, right? If you need to sell it, can you refinance it? Yeah, there's bank statement loans out there that you can do. There's other strategies. I know you're talking about some of the tax stuff you're running into. Ideally, if you could do one of these in your self-directed Roth, if you have enough money, that's what you really want to do, is what I would suggest.
It works out great, but what if you need money now, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
so this is, I don't
I
have
know.
like the job thing, right? There's people in the same boat. Like, yeah, I would love to throw that money into, oh, we could go into, oh boy, self-directed. I've got a couple of syndications, my self-directeds in that looks like might fold
Oh yeah,
that are
yeah,
yeah, and out of the Phoenix market, which that's gonna hurt a little bit. I mean, it's all play money when it's in your IRA, right? It
yeah.
doesn't count. Um, but yeah, no, I don't know. What are you guys starting to see some issues like that in like your market with multifamily?
Yeah, yeah. Right now it's a mess.
Yeah.
I work with they're called a Merit Bank. They got bought out by SunTrust. They're like a
Hmm.
local regional. And I met one of the I actually met the CEO when I was working with the NFL guys. And that's one of the things. They're a pretty vanilla bank, and
Hmm.
they're seeing a lot of people on their multifamily space. Of course, they like this area, and now it's ballooning. So he was telling me almost half the people have to come in with money. So
Hmm.
if they're not well strapped with cash, that's going to be a challenge too. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity within our market, especially what I'm seeing on the
Oh,
syndication side. Generally speaking, the numbers don't cash flow here. So I know a lot of syndicators, they're not buying in South Florida market. I do know one, unless it's value add. Last year they bought about 45 million. And generally speaking, what they're asking per unit door with insurance taxes. I actually, on a personal note, I had to sell my 5 unit building
hmm.
because of the insurance. It literally
Hmm.
went from 7,000 to 13,000.
Wow.
And now it wasn't cash flowing
Hmm.
with the new insurance. So we sold it to someone that was in a 1031 exchange place. So it worked out for them. Again, we had some leverage on it, and all of a sudden, like it did okay because we started adding short-term rentals, and my partner was just like she was managing it, and it was just too much.
Hmm.
So that's some of the challenges that we're seeing in our market. I know some of the syndications in Texas. There were some, one of the groups that we're in, we've had in our mastermind, there's a couple that invested. I won't say their names, but they've lost 3 of those syndications have gone under.
Yeah, I'm hurting. Well, those particular ones, this operator, I had exited twice with him successfully for pretty good gains. And I found him on Bigger Pockets. He was on a couple of their podcasts and that kind of thing. Um, and so then I just rolled over my winnings basically to the next couple deals. This was like 2021, right? If that gives you
Mhm.
any sort of an indication of when that was.
Sure.
And Phoenix, Florida, like there's some markets that were hyper aggressive in the inflation, and they're also getting hit, the hardest with some of these because in the issue is of course the bridge loans because everyone's doing value add and rehabbing, the units, and they're going to exit at, these really low cap rates that were out there when the rates were low, and now it's just not the option. The problem, so I have in 7 syndications, 4 of them have had cash calls, and I've paid into all of my cash calls, but it's like I start running out of cash, right? And um, I had to, I paid into these to the 2 I have with these guys. Well, they only raised 2 of the 4 million they were trying to get on their cash call, And then the money they have in one of the deals, they ran out of cash in about 3 weeks.
Mm.
And so uh, they have an exit strategy. The exit strategy involves them, off the two main operators, even doing personal guarantees on some of their unrelated real estate. They have an investor who will kick in 2.5, but at this point in time now, they have to raise another four from the partners. So they could only raise two out of four before. They need 6.5, and most of that is actually locking the rate, like rate
Mhm.
locks, right?
Yep. Yep.
Because rate locks used to be not that expensive. Now they're stupid. And so they, for this to be successful and not be a where I come away with zero, they have to raise 4 million. All the investors have to kick in an extra, I think, 20% of their original investment.
Ooh.
So if you have 150 in, that's 30
Yeah.
grand, right? And and then they have an investor who'll do the 2.5 if he gets to use these unaffiliated properties as collateral, right?
Wow.
The personal guarantee. So it's like they have a way, or it's going to go to zero.
Yep. Yep. So
It's like,
syndication,
oh
the quick
God.
end of it is, yeah, there's general partners and they're raising money for a project.
Hmm.
Usually it's 3 to 5 years, is what you're usually seeing. It's a pro forma. They say, hey, after we do all these things, the new rents will be this. We'll refinance it out. You get an equity position, maybe, or maybe
They're going to
not.
sell. No, they
I
all were
guess
wanting
so.
to
Yeah.
sell,
Okay.
right? They'd all want to sell.
Okay.
Everything was, raise it, get the values, get the operating income up, and then
Yeah.
sell at these crazy low cap rates and make millions of dollars, right?
Yeah.
There's another side of that, and that doesn't always happen, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Exactly. So, again, like, I mean, like what I always tell people is, especially on the real estate side, everyone only talks about their wins, right? I mean, and as well as I do, we're very transparent, like, meaning that there's losses too, right? If it was so easy, everybody would be doing it. You can be an active investor like, Ryan is, and like I am, and also a non-active investor where you're just putting money in. So I do both too. So I definitely understand that. And it's, if you're using your Roth and your other tactics, you're lowering your tax liability too. So I think that's pretty important
yeah.
too.
But I agree with you, though. I think this sort of like pain that, limited investors are going through right now, limited partners, uh, there's a shitload of opportunity coming like into that multifamily space. So
Yeah.
if you can get into the deals with the right operators, I think it's basically turning into a great time to do that if you have money left over
Yeah.
after the other
Are
stuff.
you personally looking at projects out there? I did put Ryan's information in the chat. Also, I don't know. I mean, maybe they want to do projects with you or like in a different
Hmm.
market outside of ours, or um,
Hmm.
that may be something. If the what as I said, I wouldn't have Ryan on here if I didn't think he was a stand-up guy. He's a REO owner, and obviously I'm not saying invest with him or any of that end of it. And at the same time, if you're looking at different markets, again, he's doing a lot of different things that I am not, is what I'll say. So if that's something that you're doing or there's projects, and you could always reach out to him also.
Yeah, I'm always looking for deals and trying to put deals together for sure.
Yeah, I
And
know between our networks are pretty massive. And
I live in Washington State. I live in Washington State, but I am starting to look at more deals out of state.
yeah, I know Eric's asking, can you list a house you've signed a lease option on Airbnb
So,
later for cash flow?
so for starters, uh, the house has got to be in a community you can do that in, right? It's got to be in a city you can do that in without a license, or you got to get the license. Your lease that you have a lease option on, you need to have terms in there, or I wouldn't say need, but you should. You should have terms in there that that allow you to sublease the property, basically. So it's kind of more of a master lease situation, because most leases, if the landlord has a good lease, is going to say that you can't sublease it, and so you're going to have to negotiate that in, or that they let you, or do an addendum and let them know what your plans are if that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and today, guys, as I said, I know we're talking about super advanced techniques, right? So if you're new to real estate, I'm gonna say is, learn one thing first, and then add to your tool belt versus, hey, you're trying to do all this stuff. And it's really important that, Ryan said, even for myself, is you got to have the right partners. And what I mean by that is the right attorneys. You want to know what's happening in the state. If you're doing, seller finance, all these things, you need a team. Is really important. To do this on your own with no real estate experience, I'm gonna say it's a challenge. I'm not gonna say it's impossible. And if you don't understand how these things work, good luck trying to explain to a homeowner.
Yeah, and we didn't even get into novations yet.
Yeah, yeah. We got a few minutes. You want to do? You got about 5, 6 minutes. What
Uh,
innovation
so,
is?
well, that's becoming the new thing that people
Yeah,
are doing instead of wholesaling. Um, and I've only pitched it a couple times. It hasn't. I need to work on my delivery with it a little bit. I know if you look at it, I know you probably have your own stuff. I know Eric Brewer's stuff is out there, and he has a lot of YouTube content. Um, I would say that it's making a lot of sense, especially for people that are not licensed.
yeah,
If you're a licensed broker, it can be a little bit more complicated. So as that broker, so let's just go back into it. Innovation, just the definition of innovation is replacing a contract with another contract, basically, right? So I am signing my contract with Anish to buy his house, and I have another document lets me um, that lets me go ahead and list the property, lets me go and sign purchase and sale agreements and that kind of stuff. Attorney in fact document. I also have a novation agreement in there. And with that, um, when the property goes to market and goes to sell, we get under contract. Depending on where you live and what legal advice you get, you may have use that attorney and that power of attorney to have someone sign the actual closing documents on behalf of the seller. I don't recommend that,
no,
but
I
some people
wouldn't
are doing
either.
it that way. Or the seller comes back in and signs the final documents that they're already under contract to do. Again, it gets a little bit complicated if you don't set it up correctly because they're like, wait a second, you're making $100,000 on this deal. Um, and then so you want to make sure they're set up correctly to know that you're going to have repairs, you're dealing with all the commissions, your whatever
What,
whatever that stuff is,
let's
so
break it
everyone's on
down.
the
Like,
same page.
what's the benefit as an investor? What's the top reasons?
As an investor, I can sell to someone who has an FHA, VA, or conventional loan,
Correct.
um, and on the market, right? And so the question comes in, and this is where it comes in, is what's the benefit to the buyer or to the seller, rather,
Right.
right? And that's where you got to be. This is where you're finding the best solution, and you're not trying to find ways to screw people. Um, And so that's where, to a seller, a lot of times they don't want to deal with agents. My
Yeah.
thing is they tell me they hate agents, and I go, me too, and I am when I talk to them all the time, right? And and so they don't want to deal with agents. They don't want to deal with showings. They don't want to deal with repairs. They don't want to deal with, commissions. They don't want to deal with inspections, like all that stuff. So you're taking all of that on and then presenting them a solution where you're gonna sell the property, you're gonna market it yourself, you're gonna go through all that, deal with the showings, deal with the agents, and then you're making a cut out of that.
Absolutely. And so, again, that's an added way. It's like a mix. I don't know, it's like hybrid. You're
Hmm.
basically partnering with the seller. Some of the challenges, right? A lot of time you're out usually fixing a house. So you got to make sure if they're living in it, it might be a little bit tougher. You're on the
Hmm.
time end of it. So you want to make sure all that stuff is explained up front, is what I'm going to say. And it is and you're right. Like I do know a lot of people that do novations. Also, I can tell you within our organization, Independence Title, Kevin Thatcher. He is one of our go-to guys. Our title companies, they do a lot of novations. They do a lot of creative financing deals too. So I would highly recommend using his firm if you're using any of these creative financing deals too. So. And now I think we are almost out of time. And I think, yep, Alexa told me one lucky person that is got paid to show up today is Faris Q. So if you're Faris Q, you want a seat to our 2-day quick start, make sure you reach out to our office to grab your ticket for the quick start. And if you've already been to one, you could always give it to a good friend of yours if you'd like. And I know I mean, those 90 minutes always go by quick, always hanging out with you. And we could have probably done a full day. It's so crazy how much stuff that that Ryan, that. And I really like about what Ryan does, there's a couple things. Not only is he a licensed agent, he runs a RIA, which for me is awesome, and he practices what he preaches. So it's not that we're just selling you some theory. He's actually doing deals with creative financing. He is in a tougher state when it comes to landlord tenant laws. They're probably one of the worst states. I know you guys are like,
Amen, amen, brother.
yeah, on that end of it. So
Oh, I didn't even get into the meth house. Oh,
yeah, go ahead. You got 5 minutes. You want to talk about your meth house real quick?
oh God, yeah. So this was one of my least options. This was a work for equity one. So I actually got this off a Bandit sign. A guy calls me, says, hey, I saw your sign. My mom needs to sell her house. Can you come take a look at it? And usually I would pre-qualify that lead a lot more. This one, I'm glad I didn't. I ended up just setting an appointment because I was going to be in that part of town anyway. And I get there, and the mom didn't even want to talk to me. She was out gardening or whatever, and I'm talking to the son the whole time. And then I'm looking at the house, find out dad died a couple years ago, going to the house is kind of falling apart a little bit. And I asked him, and I used an old John Martinez quote, and I said, "Hey, when I got them together and sitting down together, hey, you probably haven't even thought about how much you want to sell this place for, have you?" And she's like, "Well, actually, I just don't want to have to pay any money when I sell it." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, how much do you owe on it?" She said, $32,000. And I was like, "Okay. Well, I'm an agent. I brought comps. Comps fixed
Right.
up were like 265, right? Something like that. Now, the place wasn't fixed up, obviously." But I'm like, well, if you fix up a bunch of stuff, you could sell it for about that, or we could sell it for probably more than that if we go on the market. I don't want to deal with showings. I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. I'm like, all right. So I ended up giving her like 10 grand more than she asked. And then also like gave her an extra 2 grand when she was out of the house because she was going to stay there another like 2 months after I bought it. Right. Because she wanted to get
Mhm.
all of her affairs in order, get all her stuff out of there and everything. And then I fixed it up and I put in some people. It wasn't fixed up all the way, but I did some stuff to it. And I put people in there on a work for equity lease option. And it went okay for the first year. And then the guy started having some employment stuff. They started falling behind. They stopped taking care of the place. And this is all in the middle of COVID. And in Washington, we also give our deadbeat tenants free attorneys.
Mm.
So they turn into like jailhouse tenants real quick, and they know their rights and all their stuff and all this stuff. And so it ended up I tried to evict them the first time, and then they ended up somehow coming up with enough money to satisfy the court. Like after I'd paid attorney, of course, I didn't get my attorney fees handled. And then this next time, after they broke up because there was a domestic dispute, this whole time, by the way, they're accumulating this garbage pile in the backyard, like a landfill, right? So when it when it finally got to an eviction, they were 10 months behind on their rent. In addition, I was out 10 grand in legal. Um, and they had this pile of stuff in the backyard, a big RV, a couple boats, all sorts of scrap metal and shit. 16 people in the property that were evicted when the sheriff showed up, 4 dogs they weren't supposed to have, right? And it just it just looks like drugs. And the people that came out of that house that I'd never even seen before just looked like drugs. So I got with a private insurance adjuster and they paid for the testing and stuff, and sure as shit, it came in hot for methamphetamine. You get, I'm going through right now the insurance claim process. Of course, the insurance company denies it at first, but there are vandalism stuff and other things you can go for with between Washington insurance law and your policies and stuff. Because ordinarily on places tenants have trashed in the past, I just ate it and fixed it and stuff. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
of
this is
course.
nuts. Well, now there's methamphetamine present. How the hell am I going to re-rent the house after I clear it out? Right?
Yeah,
Like, what kind
you
of
got to disclose
liability is that
that.
put?
Yeah.
Right. And so, um, there's a whole bunch of stuff. It's still ongoing, but we're going for they're very confident we're going to be able to get a total loss out of it. And so when I get that total loss payout, excuse me, I still have to figure out what I'm going to do is my exit strategy with the house. They're putting in new laws for density. So now the big backyard, I could potentially put two DADU units.
Nice.
Um, we could scrape it. We could put a fourplex. We could do. There's a lot of different things that start coming available. But yeah, man, the and so that's an exit strategy I hadn't considered in the past or
Yeah.
gone through, but it's trying to figure it out. But it all stemmed from this.
Yeah.
bandit sign deal that turned into a lease option that then turned into a
Yeah,
thing.
it
It's
was
all
going
sorts
great,
of,
and then you run a
yeah.
meth house. I mean,
And you can't
like,
control you can't control
yeah,
who's going to get drugs, who's going to have a domestic
yeah,
issue and get divorced or split up and,
yeah,
and kind of thing. And yeah, and it's your property and it's stuck and it's sitting there. I'm still paying my mortgage payment on it because I did a
yeah.
DSCR loan and purchased our ski cabin, right? Like, so I got that. That was all part of that one creative deal we went into before. But um, all this stuff, man. You got to figure out multiple exit strategies, have
Yeah.
multiple options, and be flexible and try not to get too emotional when things go south.
When I know when you're done with this, we'll have to get an update from you. I've been watching this process. Me and Ryan, I've talked to Ryan, and I've seen some photos of the meth house and what's been happening,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that end of it. So, and again, like I think really, like when I tell people, real estate is phenomenal, and it's always not going to be perfect.
Mhm.
If I mean, things will happen. You just got to adapt to it. Have a good team of people. The great part is, again, you running a RIA, you have people in your network. I know your power team is massive in your area. So it makes it a little bit easier for the listeners. Again, we're pretty lucky at BPM RIA. I pretty much have everything you guys need when it comes to these kind of challenges too. So,
Yeah. So if anything, guys, if you got anything, any value at all, I'd appreciate it if
yeah.
you wouldn't mind putting a review on my business,
We're
my house
I'm
buying
gonna make
page. That'd
sure
be
in
awesome.
our thank you email, we'll put a link. And again, at least, that's, let's definitely show Ryan some love, give him those 5-star reviews, and maybe even add, hey, one thing you learned. And again, if you like Ryan and you want me to have him come back some other time, we'll gladly have him back and we could talk about even more advanced strategies or some of the other things that we're doing. And next time I will have a panel. I'll make sure it's not just say Ryan. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to get all these nuggets out of you if I had a panel on here.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. Faris Q, you're the lucky winner. Make sure you reach out to our office. We do have a lot of events coming on board this month. The in-person events, make sure you RSVP, the webinars, tell a friend. And again, if you have more, I don't know if there's topics that you guys really want to hear, I could probably get some special guests on different topics too. So thanks, Ryan. I know it's nice and early out there. You're out in the West Coast, and I really
Mm.
appreciate you taking the time, away from your family and really educating us down here in South Florida, man.
No problem, man. They're sleeping because it's
Yeah.
really early.
Thanks, man.
All right, man.
Enjoy your summer, man. See
Later,
you
bud.
soon.
See ya.
Appreciate it.